Welcome to Brewers Daily. I'm your host, Dave Gasper, and we got a lot to get to on the show here today because coming up tomorrow is going to be International Signing Day, so we're going to go through some of those players on tomorrow's show that the Brewers are going to be getting, but I want to get into kind of a preview of what's going to be coming up, how this whole international signing period works if you're unfamiliar with it. And also, we got some news in the NL Central today. Nolan Arenado got traded from the St. Louis Cardinals. He's out, and we got an honor for one of the Brewers' top prospects. So let's get into it here. So I want to start with the international stuff here because this is kind of a big day in the offseason where you have basically it's like the draft that we have during the summer, but for the international players, for the Dominican Republic, for Venezuela, except it's not a draft, it's entirely free agency. They're trying to work towards having a draft. They talked about it in the last CBA negotiations, but ultimately it didn't end up happening. So it is straight up free agency for amateur players in the Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Latin America. That's generally where most of these signings happen. But basically any place that's not the United States, Canada, or Puerto Rico. Those are the players who are eligible for this. They can sign as soon as they're 16 years old. And the Brewers, how they go about it, because I've talked about this before a little bit, and I've seen some of you in the comments here on Brewers Daily kind of asking, like, how does all of this work and what the Brewers do here. So the Brewers generally, they take a very, very broad approach to international free agency. They go for quantity because a lot of these kids, you're signing them at 16 years old. You're scouting them when they're 13, 14 years old. I mean, these are not even freshmen in high school when they're getting scouted. I mean, they are in like 7th, 8th grade. And they are scouting them and thinking about, okay, how much can we sign this kid for? And they generally agree to, terms years in advance, like a year or two in advance. They agree to terms 14, 15 years old, but then they can't officially sign until they turn 16. So a lot of these deals the Brewers have had in place for a while, and the Brewers go for quantity. The Brewers generally get around 30 players each year in international free agency. There's the bonus pools that are capped for each team. The Brewers generally have one of the biggest because they are a small market team. But they'll generally get it's a handful of $1 million, around 6 or so, and it kind of varies a little bit by year. But really, you get a total bonus pool amount to spend however you want to, and the Brewers generally spend really a little over $1 million for their top players. They generally get around 3 of like the top guys that they'll spend around $1 million for, sometimes a little under, sometimes a little over. Jesus Made, Brewers' top prospect, he signed for $950,000. Another prospect in that class, though, signed for $1.3 million. That was the highest bonus that the Brewers gave out that year. So it generally spreads around a little bit. So the Brewers will they'll spread their money around like 3 top guys and then a whole bunch of smaller amounts of money and getting a whole bunch of other players to fill out the rest of the class. And that's really kind of the approach that they kind of take because these are dart throws. You don't really know what any of these kids are going to be. They're 16 years old. They're 2 years younger than drafting high school kids from America. And, even then, those high school kids, I mean, those are a lot of dart throws for some of those guys. So you really kind of don't know with some of them. So the Brewers are going to just try and take as many as possible and see who hits. Because you never know. I mean, there can be some guys. Jefferson Caro, one of the Brewers' top prospects, signed for $200,000. He wasn't considered one of the top prospects in his class that year that he came out, but he ended up being one of them. So they spread the money around. They get around 30 different players each and every single year. And, some teams take different approaches. They will spend 90% of their bonus pool on one player. And then they just kind of get a handful of guys fill out the rest of the class. And it's, maybe a class of like 6 or 7 total players. So it's not quite as much. But the Brewers have 2 Dominican Summer League teams with rosters that they want to fill. So they end up getting a lot of players each and every single year. So the international signing period, how all of this works. You got the period that goes from January 15th to December 15th. So it's really a year-long, essentially, period with a month break before the next one starts. But generally, pretty much everyone signs right on that first day because, again, they've had the deals in place for a couple of years. And that's where, it's like, okay, let's just put pen to paper. Let's get this done. We only got so much money to spend on these guys. Get them in, and they'll play in the Dominican Summer League this summer once we get to the next season. But that's generally how that period ends up going. The Brewers, so how the scouting operation goes, because the Brewers have a very strong presence and are one of the best, if not the best organization in baseball at scouting Latin American players and doing great work on International Signing Day. Jackson Churio, they got this way. Jesus Made, Jefferson Caro. You just kind of go down the list. Luis Pena, another one of the Brewers' top prospects. These are guys that they get in the international signing period. This is where you can find the legit superstars. This is where you find the Fernando Tatis Juniors. This is where you find the Ronald Acuñas, the Jackson Churios, as I mentioned, the Vlad Guerrero Juniors. This is where you find those players. The Brewers have a fantastic operation with this group. I mean, their international scouting setup is basically as big as their domestic scouting setup for the draft every single year. So this is basically like the draft. This is that Christmas Day kind of thing for the international scouts. Now the Brewers have a pretty large contingent. So they got Taylor Green, a former Brewers player, who's a director of international scouting and player personnel. Also Luis Perez, director of international player evaluation. Those guys are kind of heading up that operation. Yeah, Gary Peralta, who's the assistant director of Latin American scouting, he's high up in that system as well. So these guys are kind of organizing everything. But then, I mean, you got your coordinators, you got your scouts, you got your cross checkers. Same kind of setup as your domestic scouting. You've got these scouts, these guys embedded in Venezuela, embedded in the Dominican Republic. They know the trainers around there. They know the players. They know the high schools. They know where to find these types of players. They have the connections, so they live full on long term in Venezuela, in the Dominican Republic, and they are checking these guys out. They are finding them, and they are reporting back and saying, "Hey, this kid's a stud. We need to sign him for X amount of money." Whatever it is, and they plan this out ahead of time. And that's where the Brewers have such a strong presence because they have built those connections over several years, and they have those scouts in place, and it is just an absolute machine that they have down there. Just fantastic. Being able to know and find all the top talent in those countries and being able to get them to sign with the Milwaukee Brewers. So that's kind of how the whole apparatus works. It's the same kind of setup as your domestic scouting, where you have the scouts kind of go out, they cover their certain regions, whatever it is. They talk to the coaches that they know. They talk to their connections. Be like, hey, there's this really good player over here. You should go check him out. They go, they see him, they watch him play, they talk to him, things like that. That's kind of how the whole thing works. And they come to a verbal agreement on a number. And then it's like, okay, and then they have to wait until they turn 16, and then they can officially sign. So they remain in contact with them. They just kind of make sure this is all set and good, but they come to these deals pretty well in advance, which is how everyone is able to sign right away here on National Signing Day. So it's going to be a very exciting time for all these scouts, all these players coming up here tomorrow. So very excited for how that's going to end up shaking out here. Now back to stateside here in the Major League club. So one of the biggest thorns in the side of the Milwaukee Brewers for the past several years has been Nolan Arenado. And Nolan Arenado is finally out of the NL Central. He's still in the National League, but he got traded today got traded on Tuesday here to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, Arenado got sent with a whole bunch of money along with him. $30 million of the approximately $41 million that he had left on his deal. And the Diamondbacks only sent a low-level minor league pitcher in return, Jack Martinez. So this is a straight salary dump sell-off. the Cardinals literally sent $30 million along with just to get him off the team because they wanted to clear room for their young prospects that they got coming up. They've been trying to trade Arenado. They finally found a taker for him. And really, he's been in decline the last couple of seasons, but he still makes contact at a pretty high clip. Still a pretty solid defender over there at third base. So, he ends up moving on to a new spot. But, thankfully he is out of the NL Central. But now the Cardinals rebuild can continue as they clear room for their younger players. And I wonder, too, what this could mean for the Freddie Peralta market, because now Jordan Lawler, one of the, he was a first-round pick of the Diamondbacks a couple of years ago. He's an infielder, been playing kind of third base, and now he kind of has no position to play because Nolan Arenado is going to be there. So you wonder if the Diamondbacks maybe would be more willing to part with Jordan Lawler in a trade. Perhaps the Diamondbacks are in the Freddie Peralta market. I mean, a lot of teams certainly are. So if the Diamondbacks wanted to trade for Freddie Peralta, Jordan Lawler could be a player who would make a ton of sense for the Brewers to want in a return. Very talented guy, hasn't really gotten a chance to show it at the big league level, but has proven everything that he needs to in AAA. So if they're souring on him and they want to move him someplace else, the Brewers and a Freddie Peralta thing, I mean, that could be a match. Now, granted, the Brewers will also need a young starting pitcher in return, not just Jordan Lawler. There's going to have to be a starting pitcher in there as well. But that could be, a good nucleus there for a trade return for Freddie. So just an idea. Nolan Arenado has moved on to the Arizona Diamondbacks, so he's finding himself a new home. And lastly here, I want to bring this up. Baseball America has put out here their top 10 prospects by position for the upcoming season. And the Brewers' first-round pick last year, Andrew Fischer, he was named the top third base prospect in all of baseball by Baseball America. So, I mean, that's a fantastic honor for him to be up that high. Now, he came in last year, played 19 games at the end of the season after getting drafted, hit .311 for High A Wisconsin. I'm imagining he's going to start this year again in High A. But, I mean, it was a great start for him. And a very highly touted draft pick. So, the fact that he's up there on Baseball America's list, maybe he could even be a top 100 prospect this season. And certainly, I think he's got the possibility to rise up to that mid-season if he's not there at the start of the year. If he continues to perform the way that he has, being a first-round pick, having that pedigree, and getting the results done, that's going to put you in the top 100 very quickly. So Baseball America gives a pretty high honor here to Andrew Fischer. So that's very exciting for him. Very exciting for the Brewers' future as well, because they've still kind of been trying to find that long-term solution at third base. Caleb Durbin's there right now. Is he the guy long-term? I don't know. But they have drafted heavily at the corner infield spots in recent years. Brock Wilken, Mike Bove, Andrew Fischer as well. So they've got quite a few third basemen. Luke Adams also can play third as well. So got a whole bunch of different guys that you could look at for that position. But Fischer may just be the best of the bunch. So very excited for his future and what he's going to bring for Milwaukee. So that'll do it for this time. And again, be sure to subscribe and get notified every single time a new episode drops. And, tomorrow, I mean, we're going to be looking at, the International Signing Day, the guys that are coming in, joining the organization, some of these big-time prospects. So excited to see who could maybe be that next Jesus Made, that next Jackson Churio on this club, because this is where you find them. This is where you find those types of guys that could be the future for your organization. The Brewers have had a ton of success with that in recent years, and maybe they could find the next ones here as well. So I appreciate you watching. Again, be sure to subscribe and get notified every single time a new episode drops. And follow me on Twitter at dgasper24. Thank you. This has been Brewers Daily.